Welcome. It's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. I am Jerry Usher along with Debbie Georgiani. This, among other places, is where people are talking about the things that are important. And today, Debbie, we've actually got a topic that I don't think enough people are talking about, and we are going to try to look at something that is, I think, a vital issue that is sort of pervading, it's all pervasive in our culture. And yet, I think a lot of people are being, perhaps misled or at least underinformed. So I think it's a very important show. I'm glad everybody's with us for this one.
I think it's a disgusting. It's interesting to discuss it, I should say. But actually, maybe that was a little bit of a Freudian slip as we were doing the research, Jerry. I do find it kind of disgusting how sometimes we give our hard-earned money and we don't know where it's going. And yet we are surrounded by all these causes and campaigns that our heart is moved, that we want to give to and to change and to make a difference. And to come to find out that possibly the hard-earned money that we give is actually defeating the cause. It's actually working against us. It's actually doing the exact opposite, possibly. I think it's an interesting discussion, and I can't keep getting that out of my mind, Jerry. I tell you, I was doing the research all night, and I was just stumped and stunned about how I kind of feel like we were duped. We were really duped, and it's all over the place. You turn on Saturday football, Sunday professional sports. It's in the department stores. It's in schools. It's on the box tops of cereals and cans of soup. And everywhere you go, there's a cause that is asking us to give our money, and we're supposed to assume that it is an honorable and good cause that is doing the right thing. And this is really, this is going to be a good discussion. Dear listeners, we want you to weigh in on this at 1-800-585-9396. But I know you're going to go into more detail about this, Jerry.
Well, yeah, and what Debbie's talking about, this can be any number of causes. I remember hearing years ago the March of Dimes, which, their main focus, if I have it right, is on, babies and premature baby, helping out at that stage of life. And yet it was said that they were giving money to groups that funded abortions and things like that. This is not to pick on any organization. The purpose of the show today is for us to have an intelligent conversation about some very important truths and realities that we have to understand and that are being underreported or not reported at all. And we've titled the show, I came up with this, folks, so it's my fault. Don't blame Debbie if you don't like it. The show is Men in Pink. And I'll tell you, we were getting a lot of social media response on this as well. It just kills me to look at these 350-pound burly grown men who want to rip each other's heads off on a football field on Sunday, prancing around in pink. And I believe, I don't know the details of this, but I believe it's, the NFL has a contract probably with, I would guess, the Susan G. Komen Foundation. Maybe it's some other organization. But they want to bring awareness to breast cancer. All right, all in favor, raise your hands. Debbie and I have our hands raised in the air right now.
Absolutely.
Do we want to bring? I have known people who have survived breast cancer, and I've known of people who have died of breast cancer. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to find two people who want to bring awareness to it and see it eradicated more than Debbie and I do. The problem is this. Groups like Susan G. Komen, it is verifiable that they give money to Planned Parenthood. Well, what is Planned Parenthood but the largest abortion provider in the world? And it is scientifically proven that abortion increases a woman's chance of getting breast cancer. So, Debbie, I think the word that you were trying not to say but kept wanting to come out, disgusting, is really true right now, because this is a vicious cycle. Mm-hmm. We give our money, like you said, Debbie, to a cause that we think is going to a very noble effort, and it could be circling right back around to what is creating the problem we're trying to get rid of. So this is what we want our listeners to weigh in on today. Sorry, I went on a long time there. But.
No, that I thank you so very much, because you can tell I'm very emotional about it, because I actually, Jerry, it's interesting. I remember going and shopping with a girlfriend of mine, and we had a couple choices to pick out, a couple things that we were going to get as gifts, and that pink ribbon was on one of them. And I remember my girlfriend saying, "Oh, we got to go for that. We got to go for that. That's breast cancer awareness. That's breast cancer for the cure." And I remember saying to myself, well, and it kind of tugged on my heartstrings, and I was like, well, yeah, I want a cure for breast cancer. And so I really, it bothers me that we don't know the full truth before we are just kind of emotionally giving ourselves over and committing ourselves to a cause that, like you said, Jerry, could actually be causing the very disease that we're trying to get rid of. So, I mean, I find this fascinating, and to help us with this conversation, we are just so pleased and so honored to have Dr. Joel Brind on with us. And let me just read to you a little bit. I mean, he has such an extensive, amount of experience and expertise in this field. But Dr. Joel Brind he's a professor of human biology and endocrinology at, do I say it correctly, Jerry? Baruch? Is it?
Baruch College.
Yes,
Yeah.
Baruch College City in University of New York since 1986. He's a research biochemist since 1981 and the CEO of Natural Food Science, founded in 2010. And Dr. Brind is a leading advocate of the abortion breast cancer link, which states that abortion increases the risk of breast cancer. So, Dr. Brind, we are just so honored, so incredibly honored to have you on with us. Could you, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, but please share with us this link that we have been waiting to hear and wanting to know what this means for all of us as we donate to these causes. Welcome, Dr. Brind.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I am very honored to be here, and always enjoy and welcome the opportunity to talk about something which, as you said, is not talked about enough or not talked about at all. In fact, it's even worse whenever it does rear its head, the issue of abortion and breast cancer. If it's talked about at all, it is denied. And it's very easy for a lot of these voluntary organizations to deny it. They are in collusion with the government because the National Cancer Institute, which a lot of people think is a voluntary organization. The National Cancer Institute, or NCI, is one of the government alphabet soup agencies, and unfortunately it's rather corrupt when it comes to the politically sensitive issue of abortion. So also many of the scientists who work for the NCI or who are under NCI grants, they need. Yes, we've proven there is no link between induced abortion and breast cancer. And not only is the link real, but evidence keeps coming out virtually every week or every month. There's another study because, of course, as we all know, abortion has been exported largely overseas. We have the one-child policy in China, which started in 1980, and extensive use of abortions in India as part of aggressive population control programs. You would think they were having an epidemic of breast cancer, and you know what? They are. And even to the extent that that's not acknowledged, that, oh, yes, breast cancer is a real problem. Well, we need to do more mammograms out there. We need to do more awareness. I suppose we should get everybody in India and China to wear more pink, and that's going to solve the problem. But in fact, there have been, for example, in the last 6 years, there have been 14 studies in the Indian subcontinent alone, which all show increased risk, and they even show a higher relative risk than you find in America. In America and in the Western industrialized world, there was an overall demonstration. We went going back to our major review and meta-analysis in 1996, published by the British Medical Association, which showed that at that time there were about 24 studies around the world which showed that there was an overall 30% increase in the risk of breast cancer, which is already pretty common. Roughly 10% maybe goes up to 13% lifetime risk, something like that. When it comes to places like China and India, where typically breast cancer risk has been lower, the relative risk is higher. So in China, it's closer to 50%. But even in China, it's not as bad as it is in places like India. Our policy means that most of the time the abortion happens after they've already had a child. And the most costly abortion in terms of breast cancer risks are the ones that happen before one has a full-term pregnancy. And so in India, you have relative risks, typically 400%, 500% higher risk of breast cancer. In a couple of studies, 1,000 to 2,000% increases in the risk of breast cancer, up to 10 and 20-fold. Why? Because breast cancer was rare. Maybe it's up to about 0.5%, 1% or so of the population. So if you have an abortion, you may multiply that risk by 5 or 10. Why? Well, typically in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, places like that, typically women would get married in their teens. They'd start having kids early, have a lot of kids, breastfeed them all, never smoke, never drink. Very few of those things around to give them breast cancer, but the one risk factor, therefore, that sticks out like a sore thumb is abortion. And so those are populations where not only has the proof of the link between abortion and breast cancer been confirmed, but it has been very strongly reinforced by the fact that it really can be studied in isolation, different from in a population where there are so many other risk factors for breast cancer. So it's been proven again and again, and yet you see these very strange things going on with studies. Like, for example, the last study from India said, oh yes, we showed a 60% increase in the risk of breast cancer, just like the study that was done in 2008 in Turkey. And what they don't say is that for women who had 2 or more abortions, they had a 12 times increased risk. They don't even mention that. And everybody reads the abstract and the conclusions at the end of the abstract, which is what you see when you search for a paper, is they don't even mention the word abortion. So they kind of make it disappear. Now you might say, well, are all these researchers corrupt? Well, no, not necessarily. But what happens is you have this what is viewed to be a gold standard, the peer review process. That's supposed to be sacred, right? Peer review, that means it's a good study, a study that's been vetted by scientists who are colleagues and who are equally expert and who can apply their expert standards and give their stamp of approval to a study that is really bona fide, except it's to a field of experts which are largely more and more political operatives. So all you need are politically correct population control enforcers sitting on the editorial boards of the journals. And so the scientists will say, well, yes, we've done this study in Bangladesh, or we've done this study in Bengal, or we've done this study in Maharashtra, or we've done these studies somewhere else in China or elsewhere in Asia. And they say, well, okay, yeah, we'll publish your study, but, we'll just change a little word here and there. You don't really need to mention abortion in the conclusions. They can just tweak a little word here and there, and presto, another study which has yet confirmed again. You remember I said there were 14 studies in 2008. And so this last study that was published, guess what? None of those other 13 studies from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka are even mentioned. So they got their paper published all right through the peer review process, but the peer review process is a factor in important information. And the net effect is that this is all covered up in broad daylight. And when you consider how many women there are in China and India, just look at China and India alone. You have over 1 billion women. So if the increase, let's say very conservatively speaking, someone has maybe just a 1% risk of getting breast cancer, and if she has an abortion, maybe it just doubles or triples to 2 or 3%. All right, so let's say she's got an absolute increase. I hope that's not too technical a term, but let's say the increase in the rate of breast cancer in the population goes up from, say, 1% to 3%. That's 2% of the population now may get breast cancer, which wouldn't have otherwise if they didn't have an abortion. Well, what's 2%? What's 2% of 1 billion women? Right? You know, I mean,
Right.
1% of a billion is 10 million. 2% of a billion is 20 million.
Wow.
We're talking about very, very large numbers, millions of women getting breast cancer in this epidemic that is unfolding. And the people who control the gatekeepers of public information, specifically public health information, the health ministries, the voluntary organizations, like Komen, like the American Cancer Society, like the National Cancer Institute, you have a revolving door of corrupt technocrats. A lot of them may have PhDs, and so they are cancer researchers. So they're on a nice pedestal, right? Oh, yes, let's donate money. They're such great people, oh, wonderful people dedicating their lives to cancer research. Not really. They are doing whatever they need to do to keep the money flowing through the pipelines that fund their research. And this has actually been demonstrated, believe it or not, in a study that came out in 2005 that was funded by the NIH, where they actually researched the researchers. And they found that when they anonymously contacted researchers that were funded by the National Institutes of Health, of which the National Cancer Institute is the largest, when they anonymously questioned these researchers, they sent out thousands of questionnaires to grantees, and they asked them a number of questions about their behavior. And one of the questions was, do you ever change the design methodology or results of a study in response to pressure? Now, the funding source, of course, is the NIH. Well, do you know that of young scientists who are just starting out, actually 1 in 10 admitted to changing the design methodology or results of a study on the basis of pressure from a funding source? But after they had been around for several years and they were in their mid-career as scientists working for NIH grants, over 20%, more than 1 in 5, admitted to buckling under pressure from the funding source in order to change the design, the methodology, or the results of the study. And so you have a process which is completely politicized. When something is supposed to be safe, the abortion is supposed to be safe, and the pill is supposed to be safe, and all of these, everything else that's supposed to be safe, you can't publish something and have it be credible and have it survive as a credible finding in the public health world if it goes against the dogma of what is supposed to be safe. And that's where we are. Abortion is supposed to be safe, so you better not try and publish anything that says it's unsafe, because even if you do get it published, it is going to be discredited from the highest sources of public information, the government and the voluntary agencies.
Well, Dr. Brind, let me. I'm going to give a number out to our listeners. We've got some calls coming in, and I want them to be able to talk with you. This is so important. This is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We're talking with Dr. Joel Brind. He is a professor of human biology and endocrinology at Baruch College, City University of New York, a research biochemist, and he has done perhaps as much research as anyone into the connection between abortion and an increased risk of breast cancer, and also artificial contraception fits in here as well. So I want to invite you, our listeners. What is your take on this? Have you been concerned about what we see as just the inundation of our culture with this? Almost you're guilted into supporting an organization like Susan G. Komen, which then in turn gives money to Planned Parenthood, which funds abortions, which helps to increase breast cancer. Almost a circular defeat of where your money is going. Or have you been on the pill, perhaps, and you're concerned about what you're hearing? Maybe you have had an abortion before, and you're thinking, well, what do I do now? How can I sort of maybe reverse any effects that might have increased my risk of breast cancer? 800-585-9396. And Dr. Brind, I'm going to be very cruel to you because we got a break in about 4 minutes. But in that time, can you explain? You've talked a lot about the studies and so forth and the connection, but for the layman, the laywoman who's listening right now, what is it? Why is there an increased risk of breast cancer between, for someone who's had an abortion?
Okay, so you want to know the biological basis of the abortion-breast cancer link. It's actually quite simple. Lots of hormonal changes happen during pregnancy, as you probably are aware, the levels of the sex steroid hormones, the female hormones, estrogen and progesterone, go sky high right after conception, and they just keep going up and up and up. By the end of the first trimester, they are up by about 2,000%, about 20-fold higher than where they are at the time of conception. And not only do they maintain the pregnancy, but the main role of the estrogen is not just to maintain the pregnancy, where it's secondary importance, but both estrogen and progesterone are necessary to make the breast grow. Fine to gestate a baby for 9 months in utero, but then when the baby is born, he or she really has to start eating. It's not getting fed through the placenta anymore. So with a lot of progesterone around, the estrogen then his main job is to make the breasts grow. So they grow and they grow and they grow. Now, most of the growth, like the growth of any tissue, when cells grow, when the tissue grows, when the organ grows, it does so because the cells multiply. And we all know that cancer is a disease in which cell multiplication is out of control. Now, it turns out that only cells which are capable of multiplying are capable of becoming cancerous anyway. So once you have tissue that is terminally differentiated, let's say if you have in the breast cells which are now producing milk, even if you zap them with a carcinogen, well, maybe they'll stop producing milk, or they'll produce an abnormal milk, but they will not become cancerous, because once cells become terminally differentiated to do their final function, their ability to multiply is turned off. But in order for the breast to grow through most of the pregnancy, they are in a situation grow. And that goes till about 32 weeks, well into the third trimester, before other hormones take over, turn all those cells into milk-producing cells, and then you end up, if the pregnancy goes at least 32 weeks, you have a lower risk of breast cancer than you had before you had got pregnant. That's why having a baby, having a full-term pregnancy, decreases the risk of breast cancer. If you don't get pregnant, but if you do get pregnant and that normal pregnancy is terminated before 32 weeks with an abortion, you have a higher risk of breast cancer than you would have if you weren't pregnant, because you had more and more of those cells being formed, which are now more and more places where cancers can start later on. So this explains this. It's a double-edged sword. You lose the protection that you would have gotten if you continued the pregnancy to term, and then it's even worse because you have started that stimulation of tremendous growth in the breast with those surging hormones.
So, Dr. Brind,
yeah.
Can I jump in real quick, because we're getting ready for that one immovable break that's going to happen in just about a minute. But I just want to kind of sum this up real quickly. So you're basically saying that when we mess with God's plan, when we mess with God's design for our bodies and what truly needs to happen in the proper way, we're going to suffer the consequences. We're going to suffer the bad consequences of this. We're opening ourselves up to cancer when we mess with God's design. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And because we are messing with the natural way of doing things, called unintended consequences. So we don't even know what's coming out of Pandora's box until many years later. I mean, another example like that is vasectomy, which everybody said was safe. It's reversible and all that. And it turns out, guess what? It's not reversible most of the time. Because of an unintended consequence, you wake up the immune system to the presence of a man's sperm, and you can cause permanent sterility. In fact, usually do. So that's just another case, especially with reproduction. It is such a delicate, highly integrated and orchestrated set of events that need to happen in order to generate the body of a new human being. That messing with that is just, and we're doing, and that's just fraught with danger. And
well, I tell you what, Dr. Brind, hang on just 1 second.
A lot of them are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we got a break coming up, and I am hanging on every word right now, and we've got Maria and Linda and John and a couple of open phone lines here. Dr. Joel Brind, we're talking about the connection between abortion and an increased risk in breast cancer. A lot of us feel like we're sort of guilted into giving to many organizations that, quite frankly, circle that money right back around to organizations that could be contributing to the cause. So what's your question, your take? 1-800-585-9396.
Something amazing is happening on EWTN. One wildly dynamic speaker and a team of young missionaries are on a cross-country road trip, spreading their message of hope in Christ. Their passion is awakening youth to the power of God's love. It's energetic, honest, affirming, like nothing you've seen on TV before. You're Amazing with Justin Fatika. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN.
60 Seconds with Father Mitch Pacwa.
Everybody should become aware of the greatness of what Jesus Christ is doing for us on that altar, becoming present to us in his sacrificial form, in a sacramental way, to be sure. But the sacrifice of Jesus is present to us, and his body and blood are present to us. What an awesome gift that is. As we become aware of it, we show it in our attitude toward the Eucharist, this tremendous respect, devotion, love. It's because of this reality that we've had many saints who have been killed protecting the Eucharist. They've died because the Eucharist is so important and so precious. Others have spent their lives in adoration of Christ in the Eucharist. As we say at every Mass, may God bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and guide you in your ways. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
EWTN is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If your cable or satellite provider doesn't carry EWTN's full programming lineup, give them a call and let them know you would like to receive EWTN 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
For more information, go to EWTN.com and click on television.
Thanks for joining us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. We're talking about how these causes have just invaded all of our daily routines and also our favorite pastimes like football. And they're all around us. And do we really know where the money is going to? And is it really going to help the cause? Or are we giving our hard-earned money to different charities that may actually be defeating that cause and actually hurting the cause? And today with us, we have our guest today, and we're so pleased, is Dr. Joel Brind. He's a professor of human biology and endocrinology. He's a research biochemist, and he is explaining to us his research and his confirmation of the abortion breast cancer link. And Dr. Brind, our phone lines are full. So we have Linda waiting in Florida, and she's listening on Divine Mercy Radio. We're going to take her first because she is waiting so patiently. And Dr. Brind, hopefully you're going to answer Linda's call or her take. And Linda, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I actually had a comment on, I called in recently, I think it was last week or the week before, and that my daughter had leukemia, and she died from a rare leukemia. And so with all the research that we had done, there was an organization that really helped us, was Candelighters of Brevard County. And I just wanted to give that information of how much help we got from them, because they helped us with, they helped families immediately with financial support who are going through, because what we went through was a 15-month battle that my daughter had. It's just a reliable organization. There's Candelighters, I think they're all over the U.S. And so that was a local organization that helped us tremendously financially, because people want to know how to help. And that was an organization. So, again, they do have other locations. I don't know all the information about it, but it was just because people, they wanted to give to the Cancer Society or Leukemia Society. But that was an organization that helped. It's because kids can't fight cancer alone. So it's an organization that helps families with the immediate financial situations. And I just wanted to get that input.
Yeah, Dr. Brind, Linda raises a good point here. We talk about some of these organizations that we may want to be cautious about supporting, but are you aware, can you recommend any particular groups or organizations that are doing, upstanding ethical research and treatment of things like cancer and so forth?
Well, I wasn't aware of the Cancelighters organization, and it's just wonderful, of course, to use some of this time to talk about which organizations are worthy of people's donations. I've been kind of going on about how a number of them are not. Some of the big breast cancer organizations, for example, one should be very wary of, because if you're going to cover up a link to breast cancer of some common exposure, then you're actually doing more harm than good. But as far as breast cancer is concerned, I'm a co-founder of the Breast Cancer Prevention Institute, which is a small charity that's in Somerville, New Jersey. And bcpinstitute.org is our website, and you can certainly donate there. We spend pretty much all of our time researching the literature, publishing literature, which helps to inform people about the risks not only of abortion but also contraception. For example, we have a brochure we put together a few years ago that says, well, if it's not okay for him to use steroids, showing a little league boy with a bat, showing a picture of a cheerleader who's, of course, being pushed in the schools to go on oral contraceptives. They're really the same kinds of steroids that it's against the law for athletes to take to build muscle. It's just the female version of the same kinds of synthetic steroid drugs, and those are also carcinogenic. So that's a whole other topic for another time. But warning people, just basically educating people about the risk factors for breast cancer in particular is what we do, and it's because the other purveyors of public information about this don't mention the reproductive risks, and those are the key ones, which cause a lot of the disease. But they are denied or avoided at all costs by the purveyors of public health information because they run contrary to the population control agenda and the idea that all of these methods of population control, chemical contraception, abortion, and all the rest of it, are safe when they're not.
Right. Dr. Brind, thank you so much for that. I want to ask you a little more about your organization, and then also, too, I wanted to share, there was a couple other organizations that also, and I wanted to get your take on that. But Linda, thank you so much for your contribution today, and thank you for waiting patiently on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. And keep calling, keep listening, and keep praying for the show if you'll do that for us. Thank you, Linda. Have a beautiful day. Dr. Brind, real quickly, we got word today that John Paul II Medical Research Institute is another great institute that people can give to that actually does breast cancer research and other cancer research and also Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Are you familiar at all with it?
I'm not, actually. I'm not familiar with them, but that's sounds like it would be a very good place to donate funds that would not be prone to the kind of political correctness that you see in the
anything named after John Paul II, right?
Yeah. So it's John Paul II Medical Research Institute, and it's jp2MRI.org. So that's another one too. See, this is great, Dr. Brind, because we're able to talk about this. This is what Take Two is all about. The conversations that we hope that people are having in their homes, safely, and then can discuss without the PC police around, and get the information out. And that's what Take Two is all about. And so we're so grateful to you that you're with us today and sharing all this information. It's helping us grow tremendously. So we're going to move right along to Carolina in Texas, listening on EWTN.com. Carolina, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and our special guest, Dr. Joel Brind.
Hello. Thank you for having me. My question is, are women who have experienced a miscarriage at the same risk for breast cancer?
Generally not. Is it Carolina or Carolina?
Both work.
Either way. Anyway, I always like to get people's names pronounced correctly. Just one thing I like to do. But your answer to your question is generally no. Most miscarriages occur during the first trimester, and the reason they occur is that there's not this surge of hormones, especially progesterone, that's necessary in order to maintain the pregnancy, even at this very early stage. So what happens is women who have these miscarriages they don't feel the same way if they've been pregnant before, because typically when you get pregnant, you feel it in your breasts. The breasts become tender and swollen because they're already starting to grow. I've had women tell me after one of my talks, they would say, that answers a question for me, because I had a miscarriage and I knew there was something wrong. I never quite felt pregnant. And that's why. But what that means is that growth spurt in the breasts, which provides more places for cancers to start and increases breast cancer risk when you abort a normal pregnancy, doesn't happen. So it's like you weren't pregnant at all. So that's for the most part. Now, the only caveat there is that if you have a miscarriage, which may occur later, let's say, in the second or third trimester, there's a miscarriage that may be due to disease or trauma, like a traffic accident, something like that, and then you lose the baby. Those are really more classifiable as accidentally induced abortions, and then they would increase the risk of breast cancer. But most miscarriages don't. The early ones, they don't.
Does that help, Carolina?
It does. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and appreciate the call to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. She didn't say that whether or not she was referring to herself or not. If it happens to be, Carolina, that you had experienced that, you can be assured of our condolences and our prayers for the miscarriage of your child or whomever you might be calling on behalf of. 1-800-585-9396. Next, we go to Roanoke, Virginia. Sirius XM 130 is how Maria has Take Two with Jerry and Debbie tuned in today. Hi, Maria. You're on with Dr. Joel Brind.
Hi. Thanks so much for taking my call. I just had a couple of quick comments. First, thank you for doing this show. I got so frustrated this year. I've started calling it the pink washing of every year. But talking about the endocrine issue, it was really frustrating to see the number of products that the Komen Foundation is endorsing with their pink that have known endocrine disruptors in them, too. A lot of the cosmetics and products that have parabens and harmful phthalates in them. It's just so frustrating that some of those even get donated directly to people who are on cancer treatment drugs, and we're finding more and more that those actually inhibit the usefulness of some of those drugs. So definitely an issue that needs to be looked into. Slightly tangentially, I also am just frustrated with so many of the international groups that we've always been able to trust, like UNICEF and even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I think even Amnesty International, that are pushing through the UN some really aggressive abortion and contraception, legislation and plans in Africa and places. It's just really distressing, and you don't know. You have to do all this research before you can donate anywhere anymore. So I'm glad you're having this show and shedding a little light on it.
Dr. Brind?
Dr. Brind?
Yes. Well, I guess that wasn't really a question. It was just a lot of interesting facts.
Yeah, if you have any insights or comments on what Maria said, feel free to
Well,
to
I am
them.
not one to think that many of what are believed to be endocrine disruptors are really serious endocrine disruptors. For example, the BPA, which is in in some of the plastics that a lot of the drinks are bottled in. BPA is an estrogenic compound, but not if you drink it. You could drink large quantities of it and your liver destroys it. So that actually, although it may have some, it doesn't have an impact on people. When you drink something out of a bottle and there's some BPA in there, that is not going to do any estrogenic activity for good or ill inside your body. However, the environment is very important. But even then, what are the big estrogenic compounds, the big endocrine disruptors in the environment? Guess what? It's the pill. Because the pill, even though it says they're hormones, they're not hormones. They're synthetic steroid drugs. And because they are designed to work as a pill, that means they're designed to be resistant to biodegradation by your liver or by all kinds of microorganisms in the environment. So what is the most important pollutant in the world these days? It is 17-alpha-ethinyl estrogen, main estrogen that you find in every formulation of birth control pills that has estrogen in it. It's very slowly biodegradable, very resistant to degradation, and because you have hundreds of millions of women worldwide, you can find downstream in the wastewater, in the groundwater, in the effluents going out to sea of every major metropolitan area in the world, you can see ethinyl estradiol with its effects of feminizing fish and wildlife, and this has been documented now for at least 20 years. And quietly, you find that toxicologists around the world have been trying to figure out how to counter this, but you never hear about that. Because, again, this is supposed to be safe. And they talk all about pollution, and including plasticizers and pesticides and preservatives and you name it. But the worst one is the stuff in the birth control pill. Those are the worst offenders because they are so exquisitely sensitive. For example, this ethinyl estradiol that I talked about, in order to make it work as a pill, it's much more potent than the natural estrogen that's in a woman's own body. But did you know that the natural estrogen in your own body gets to its peak right before you ovulate every month when you're not pregnant? And the highest it ever gets when you're not pregnant is a level of 300 parts per trillion. And when you're in the beginning of your cycle, it's only about 30 parts per trillion. And this 17-alpha-ethinyl estradiol is far more potent than that. So, we talk about pollutants and parts per million this and parts per billion that. This is parts per trillion, and that's why you messing up the reproductive systems of wildlife, as I say, downstream of every major metropolitan area. But you don't hear about that most of the time, do you?
Maria, thank you so much for calling Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Great take on this subject today, and we're going to get to as many more of you as we can. We've got a line open now at 800-585-9396. Dr. Joel Brind, our esteemed guest here on the program today, and we're fielding your questions and takes we're talking about really an important but not only underreported but often just completely deceptive non-reporting of connections between things like abortion and an increased risk in breast cancer. Artificial chemical contraception fits in there as well. So whatever your take or comment is, please get on the phone. Give us a call at 800-585-9396.
And Jerry, I just checked social media, and we've got the posts coming in like crazy, sharing Maria's same frustration, the same frustration we all share about having this pink everywhere and wondering, what does this mean? Should we partake in it or shouldn't we? And I think Dr. Brind, and by the way, Dr. Brind, I have the same kind of fascination with people's names. So I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dr. Brind, you are imparting so much information, and I think it really helps us. One of the things that I just want to bring up really quickly before we go to John, who's also waiting very, very patiently, he gets our Patience Award today. Dr. Brind, we give a Patience Award out for those who can sit on the phone and listen as long as they can on the show.
But what about me? What about me?
Oh. Okay, we'll think of something.
Me, isn't it? What about me?
We'll think of something for you, we promise. But, one thing I just wanted to kind of throw into the mix of the conversation, because this is coming up on social media, and this show goes very fast, so we're not going to be able to read all the posts on social media, but kind of the if you surmise what everybody's saying is that, where do we give? How do we, what's the vetting process? What do we do? What's our due diligence on research and everything before we give? And Dr. Brind, I'm just curious as to your take on this. I mean, I sometimes feel like when I'm confronted, I give because I'm a Catholic Christian, and I give just because I'm a Catholic Christian. I mean, maybe the better thing to do is to have a set portfolio of what myself and my husband have agreed to research and to do our good homework on, and we have a set portfolio of what we give every year, and that's it. And maybe that's the better way.
Yeah,
is that what you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do. Yeah. We December 31st.
Right.
The first ritual of New Year's Eve is to go through, and get those end-of-year donations into a whole list of charities. And,
Right.
And, that we have given to before, or some which are new that we've learned about and which we know, in many cases, because we know people who are directly involved with what they do. And there's ample opportunity, ample places to donate what they call disposable income, to money that you can spare to give to somebody. There are plenty of good places to give it, and and not to feel guilty just because you happen to run into somebody who has a sign up or a pink ribbon on the window or anything like that. I mean, these are. It's not really necessary to give into that because we know how generous we are and how we do our giving, and it's nothing. There's no reason to allow the kind of intrusive pace of the 24/7 news cycle and the busyness of the typical schedule to intrude on things like that, because these are important decisions. Because when you give money, it's not just, can I afford to give $100 here or there because it's something else I can't buy for myself. But it's what this show is all about, really, is that when you're giving money, you are giving nourishment to some organization, and if they are not doing good, and if they're wasting it, or even worse, if they're against real public health interests with what they're doing, then that's worse than not giving at all. So it's that's the way I do it, and I would recommend just doing it that way and just not being in every moment
impulsive,
feel somehow guilted into giving just because the phone rang.
Right, exactly. Well, okay, so now we're going to give that award to John in North Dakota, who's been waiting so patiently. Welcome, John, to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and our special guest, Dr. Joel Brind. Hi, John.
Hello.
Hi.
So, I actually wanted to ask the question that Caroline asked. I thought that was a very interesting point. But now that she's asked it, I just wanted to ask Dr. Brind, you're casting a little shade on, funding sources affecting the bent of research, which I think is a problem in pretty much all research that gets funded by money anywhere. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the biases that his research may or may not have picked up due to his particular funding sources.
You're speaking about whom now?
You're referring to Dr. Brind, John?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you're referring to me in the third person. Okay. My research, my funding was basically to put together all the studies that had been done as of 1996 when we published our meta-analysis. We got a grant of $2,000 from the Pennsylvania Department of Education to translate some into English. And other than that, I have received for this research basically no funding. That is, it's all been essentially paid for as part of my salary and also those of my collaborators as we publish papers. So when you are an academic, when a professor, you don't spend a full classroom teaching is not a full-time job, so part of your salary is meant to do research, and so that's basically been the support for my research. The support for the Breast Cancer Prevention Institute has largely gone for the publication of pamphlets and brochures and booklets on on breast cancer. And also, one curious thing, way back when, we actually got some money from the North Jersey Komen Foundation affiliate in New Jersey to do a little bit of research. And we did the research and we published our findings, and the findings really did about abortion and breast cancer. They were about, this was about the different, whether abortion would affect the type of breast cancer, the histological type of cancer. The findings of others that it didn't make any difference in terms of the histological type. It was published in San Antonio breast cancer meetings in 2001, and the Komen National Organization was furious at us because we actually mentioned the abortion breast cancer link, and they insisted that even though it was specified in the contract of the grant award, that we delete their name from the copy of the publication, from the proceedings in which it was published. They were so intent upon not being associated with any organization that would acknowledge the abortion breast cancer link. Needless to say, we didn't get any more money from them, but that was again another small, like a $2,000 grant. And we also, part of another funny conversation with them is when they said, "Well, we gave you this grant." We said, "Well, we did the study, we published our findings," and they said, "Oh, we don't believe that. You can't do a study for $2,000." Yeah, we did. It didn't cost us much to go over records. Our time, we spent our time basically, and there was just very little incidental expenses, travel expenses, printing expenses, things like that involved in actually doing the research. But no big money. No big money, no support from any granting agencies or voluntary organizations really has funded my research. It's all been, as I say, funded by mainly by salary, my day job salary at the City University of New York.
All right, John. Thank you, John, for the phone call.
It's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Allison, we're going to get you on the air here, Station of the Cross. Allison and Dr. Brind, between the two of you, we've got 60 seconds, but we wanted to get Allison on the show. So, Allison, please be as brief as you can, and we'll get a quick answer from Dr. Brind.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I took an online breast cancer screening quiz, and it told me that because I had not been on the pill for more than 5 years, that I had a higher risk for breast cancer. Why would it say that?
You had a higher risk
45
because you were
seconds,
not
Dr.
on the pill?
Yeah, because I was not on the pill for more than 5 years.
Oh, you mean because you had been on the pill but discontinued it for more than 5 years?
No, it told me that I was not, because I was not on the birth control pill for more than 5 years, that I had a higher risk.
That might be true for ovarian cancer, but not for breast cancer. Absolutely not. It goes the other way. And there's, and that's shown anyway. So it may have been talking about ovarian cancer. Ovarian cancer, the risk is actually lowered by the pill because it prevents you from ovulating. And the risk of ovarian cancer is related to how many times you ovulate in your lifetime, but that's much rarer than breast cancer. So on balance, as the World Health Organization acknowledges, the pill increases the risk of cancer, actually breast cancer, endometrial cancer, and also liver cancer.
Allison, thank you for your call. Dr. Joel Brind, thank you so much. It's BCP for Breast Cancer Prevention, bcpinstitute.org. Dr. Brind, can we have you back on the show sometime?
Sure. Just give me a call, and we'll be happy to do it again. The opportunity to get the truth out is so rare that I really do welcome it.
Thanks.
If everybody were talking about it, that'd be one thing, but they're not.
Thank you.
Well, we are.
Debbie,
we're talking about
another great week behind us.
It's a wonderful week. And Dr. Brind, you got our Shining Star Award today for being our best guest so far this week. And thank you so much. We wish you all a beautiful and blessed weekend. See you Monday.